Hi, I'm Jake Hart, your host. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
And I'm Zara Moon, here to guide you along the way. Welcome to the channel.
Today we're exploring some really fascinating material you sent us.
Yep, and our goal is to dive in, pull out those key insights, and make sense of it all for you.
Exactly. We want clarity, not just, information overload, like drinking from a fire hose.
Definitely not. We're here to help connect the dots.
So today's deep dive is all about the stages of spiritual awakening.
And our main source is a YouTube video. It's from a channel called the You Movement, created by someone named B.
And you also sent some background on Bee herself, which actually seems pretty important for context here.
It really is. Her personal story deeply informs how she views these awakening stages.
Yeah, tell us a bit about that. It sounded quite intense.
Well, she talks about a really challenging childhood adoption into what she describes as a narcissistic household masking autistic traits,
Wow, okay.
which led to various coping mechanisms and later things like an abusive marriage, health problems, quite a lot.
That's a heavy journey. And this led to her creating the You movement.
Sort of evolved into it. She started something called the Unfucking movement, which then became the You movement.
Okay.
And her mission seems crystal clear: helping other people heal.
And she had her own major turning point, a spiritual awakening.
Exactly. A profound one, she says, back in 2001, involving a Kundalini experience.
And that changed things dramatically for her.
Apparently so. She mentions quitting various substances, healing from numerous conditions, a real transformation.
Which then inspired her work, her channel, and other resources.
Right. She has the YouTube channel, a support group, events, one-on-one services, drawing on her background in things like addictions counseling, psychology, Reiki, plus her own intuition.
Okay, so that context is definitely helpful. Our mission then, for you listening, is to unpack these stages Bee describes.
Yeah, think of it as a potential map, maybe a way to understand your own experiences or perhaps what others are going through.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Let's start at the beginning, the pre-awakening stage. What does Bee say about that?
Well, she suggests this first phase isn't necessarily short. It could be years.
Years, or even longer.
Potentially your whole life, actually. Since birth. If your soul's on this path, is how she puts it.
Huh. That makes you look back differently, doesn't it?
It does. She even mentions a near-death experience she had as a kid, age 3, falling through a roof.
Whoa.
And how, looking back now, she sees it through a different, maybe more spiritual lens.
Interesting. And within this sort of pre-stage, or maybe just after, she mentions a first awakening.
Yeah, for her, that was around 2001 with Reiki, but she's really candid about something she calls spiritual ego potentially showing up here.
Spiritual ego. What does that look like?
It's that feeling, like you suddenly get it all, maybe after you first encounter concepts like manifestation or crystals.
Yeah, that initial rush, like you've cracked the code.
Exactly. But maybe without the deep lived understanding. B calls it the lobby level of awakening.
The lobby level, I like that. So you feel woke, but
But you might still be operating under illusions, maybe thinking you have more control than you do just by thinking positively or something.
right. Still kind of superficial in a way.
Perhaps. She implies there are many more floors to ascend, lessons needing maybe a bit more humility.
Okay, so moving out of that lobby.
Yeah.
What's next? She talks about moving to floor number 1, the initiations.
Yes, the initiations or the letting go phase. This is where life really starts to challenge those illusions of control.
How so? What kind of challenges?
Well, she gives some pretty intense examples from her own life. Job loss,
Okay.
healing crises, physical, emotional, mental, losing important relationships.
Sounds like a lot.
Oh, yeah. Financial problems, too. She
Yeah.
listed them off like check, 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 check to check. It
Yeah.
really covers the bases of major life disruptions.
Wow. That sounds incredibly difficult. What's the point of all that, according to her? Is there a purpose?
The purpose, she explains, is really about breaking attachments.
Attachments to what?
To pretty much everything. People, places, things, behaviors, old ways of thinking, energies, even false security blankets like money.
Money is a false sense of security.
She uses her own experience, losing financial stability after her divorce, as a lesson, realizing true safety wasn't in the bank account.
So these aren't punishments or failures.
Not at all, in her view.
No.
She sees them more as like soul-level agreements, contracts you made for learning, for alignment.
So less about shame and more about seeing it as part of the path.
Exactly. Let go of the guilt. It's part of the curriculum, basically.
Okay. After those intense initiations, she mentions a real wake-up call. What triggers that?
That seems to happen when the old ways just aren't working anymore. Doctors, therapy, self-help. Nothing's really fixing the core issues.
You reach a point where you have to try something different.
Pretty much. It's like the soul's voice gets louder, pushing you towards big changes, maybe quitting addictions, leaving toxic situations for good. The impulse becomes undeniable.
And after that big shift, there's a bliss phase.
Mm.
That sounds nice.
It can be. Initially, she describes it as this period of like renewed energy for change. You're just so done with how things were.
Driven by the pain of the past, almost.
Yeah, the intolerability of it fuels this motivation. She even mentions having an able playlist on her channel for this phase. It's that feeling of, okay, I can do this.
A sense of progress, empowerment.
For a bit, yeah.
Okay. For a bit. Because next comes the dark night of the soul, which sounds less blissful.
Considerably less, yes. After that initial high of making changes, there's often a descent into something much deeper, much harder.
How does she describe it?
She calls it a cuckoo phase, which gives you an idea.
Yeah, it sounds intense.
Very often involves more isolation, deep loneliness, and this really intense purging of old traumas. It's heavy stuff.
Does she offer resources for that, too?
She does. She has a specific Dark Night of the Soul playlist and mentions her 1.1 support for people going through it. It sounds like a time when support is crucial.
Absolutely. Okay, so after the dark night, what's the next stage? The void phase.
Right, the void phase. She also calls it mind school.
Mind school. What happens there?
It's described as a time of recalibration. After all that purging, things might feel stagnant, stuck.
Like you're not moving forward.
Exactly. Her analogy is being trapped in a sailboat with zero wind, just kind of floating.
What's the work to be done there, then, if you feel stuck?
Rest is key, she says, and inner child work, connecting with the divine feminine, that nurturing, receptive energy.
And the mind school part.
That's about learning to manage your thoughts, tackling those deep-seated fears, that negative self-talk that probably got stirred up.
So practical tools come in handy here.
Yeah, she mentions things like affirmations, meditation. She has a Meditations with B playlist, too. It's about mindfulness, presence, and surrendering to divine timing, even when it feels like nothing's happening.
Learning patience,
A
essentially.
big dose of it, yes.
Okay, so navigating the void leads to reintegration. Sounds like putting things back together.
In a way, yeah. It's about stepping more fully into your purpose, being of service. But importantly, she stresses not from the ego.
Not for validation or recognition.
Right. It's more authentic service.
Yes.
And she's realistic that ego doesn't just vanish.
Oh, it's still there.
It's still there, she says. It just loses power. And interestingly, you can still get triggered.
Even when things are getting better.
Especially then, sometimes. As you integrate a new reality where good things can happen, it can feel unfamiliar, even scary, based on past experiences.
She mentioned something about new friendships, right? Being cautious.
Yeah, moving slowly because of past experiences with love bombing. It shows how the past still echoes, even during healing.
So reintegration isn't necessarily smooth sailing either.
No, it involves continued tests of faith, continued expansion, opening the heart more. It's ongoing.
She uses that building metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Ascending floors.
Yeah, moving up floor by floor, heading towards the roof, which she jokingly calls levitation the ultimate goal of awakening.
It's a good visual. And a reminder, like she says, that these stages aren't strictly linear.
Absolutely. You can cycle through them, revisit them. It's not a neat checklist.
One theme that keeps coming up is letting go. Attachments.
Oh, huge theme.
Yeah.
B emphasizes that letting go of attachments is like fundamental for ascension, for moving forward. All attachment.
What kind of examples does she give? Because attachments can sound a bit vague.
She gets specific. For her, it ranged from letting go of wearing makeup, which as an autistic woman was tied to masking,
Okay, that's significant.
to food attachments. And then the really big ones, trauma bonds.
Trauma bonds.
Yes, with her adoptive mother, a best friend, her ex-husband. She compares breaking those bonds to withdrawing from heroin. That's how intense it felt.
Wow. That really puts it into perspective. Did she offer help with that too?
Yep, she has a narcissistic abuse or trauma bond playlist. Her whole approach seems to be about identifying the hook behind the attachment.
The hook?
Yeah, what need is it fulfilling? What illusion is it providing? Once you see the hook, she suggests, it's easier to release the attachment.
That makes sense. Understand the root cause.
And she's quite open about her own intense desire. She says she wants to get off this planet, basically transcend the cycle, and is willing to surrender anything to do that. That's her level of commitment to letting go.
That's powerful. This has been really illuminating, unpacking Bee's perspective. For listeners who want to explore her work more directly, Where should they go?
Well, the source video is on her YouTube channel, The You Movement. Definitely check that out.
And speaking of channels, if you found this deep dive useful, please do consider supporting us here on Mystic Podcast Cruise.
Yeah, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these kinds of explorations.
We really appreciate it. So back to Bee's resources.
Right. She also runs a spiritual warrior support group on Facebook, offers anonymous posting plus Zoom meetings a couple of times a week.
That sounds like a great community resource.
Seems like it. And she does one-on-one counseling, different session lengths, different prices, and she offers a free first meeting if you're in the support group.
And other things too, oracle readings.
Oracle readings, distance healing,
No?
a range of things. But her core message seems to be empowerment.
Empowering people to heal themselves.
Exactly. Providing tools and strategies so you can do the work.
Is there a central website?
Yeah, she has one. It's a Weebly site currently. She mentioned hoping for a custom URL eventually. But you can find info and book things there. We'll try and link it in the description.
Perfect. Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaway from this deep dive.
I think it's that the spiritual awakening journey, at least as Bea describes it from her experience and work,
Yeah.
it involves these distinct phases. Pre-awakening, initiations, bliss, the dark night, the void, reintegration. They're interconnected stages of growth, challenge, and release.
But it's not a rigid path.
Not at all. Your journey might look totally different. But understanding these potential phases can offer, some perspective, a framework for your own reflection.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to consider.
Go for it.
As you think about these stages we've discussed,
Mm.
which one, if any, resonates with where you are now? Or maybe with something you've been through?
That's a good reflection point.
And perhaps what attachments might be coming up for you right now? What might be your current focus for conscious release? Something to mull over.
Definitely something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.